When I first looked at the price of Bitcoin, I almost did not bother. It was thousands of dollars. I did not have thousands of dollars to invest, and I had the same assumption most people have when they first see that number. Bitcoin is for people with a lot of money, not for me. Then someone told me I did not need to buy a whole Bitcoin. And that one piece of information changed how I thought about Bitcoin completely. I'm Sats, and this is the thing most people are never told when they first encounter Bitcoin. Let me tell you what I did not know before that conversation. Bitcoin is divisible down to one Satoshi. One Bitcoin equals 100 million Satoshis. The smallest unit of Bitcoin is one Satoshi, although the minimum amount you can buy or send will depend on the service you're using. That might sound like a technical detail. It is not. It changes everything about who Bitcoin is actually for. Here is the way I had been thinking about it before I understood this. I was looking at Bitcoin the way you look at a painting at an auction. The price on the tag is the price. If you cannot afford the whole thing, you cannot participate. You walk past and it is not for you. Here is what Bitcoin actually is. Imagine that same painting could be divided into 100 million pieces, and anyone could own any number of those pieces, from 1 to 100 million. The total value of all the pieces adds up to the price of the painting, but you do not need to afford the whole painting to own a piece of it. That is what Satoshis make possible. When Bitcoin is at a certain price, one Satoshi is 100 millionth of that price. If Bitcoin is worth $100,000, one Satoshi is worth 1/10 of a cent. For $10, you can own roughly 100,000 Satoshis before fees. For $1, roughly 1,000 Satoshis before fees. The number on the price ticker is the cost of one whole Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with the minimum amount you can hold. Here is why this matters beyond just the affordability question. When I started thinking in Satoshis instead of in whole Bitcoin, my relationship with dollar cost averaging changed. I was no longer trying to save up to buy a Bitcoin. I was simply buying Satoshis on a regular schedule, as many as my budget allowed. $50 a week became however many Satoshis $50 could buy that week. The number of Satoshis I held grew over time, regardless of what the price of a whole Bitcoin was doing. The psychological difference between trying to afford a whole Bitcoin and simply accumulating Satoshis is significant. One feels like trying to reach something that keeps moving away from you. The other feels like a consistent and achievable habit. If this is the kind of honest Bitcoin conversation you are looking for, the subscribe button is right there. There is one more dimension worth understanding. The Satoshi is already useful beyond simply measuring how much Bitcoin you own. The Lightning Network, Bitcoin's fast payment layer, commonly expresses transactions in Satoshis because the amounts being sent are often much smaller than one Bitcoin. Paying for a coffee, tipping a content creator, or sending a small amount internationally. These interactions happen in Satoshis because that is the unit that makes sense at that scale. Stacking Satoshis is not a workaround for people who cannot afford whole Bitcoin. It is just how Bitcoin works. The whole coin framing is a shorthand for price discussion. The Satoshi is the actual unit of the system. When I understood that, the price of a whole Bitcoin stopped feeling like a barrier. It became just a number, interesting for tracking value, but irrelevant to whether I could participate. Here is the short version. One Bitcoin equals 100 million Satoshis. You can buy, hold, send, or receive Satoshis in any amount your service allows. The minimum depends on the platform, not the protocol. The price of a whole Bitcoin is not the price of entry. It is just a price tag on a specific quantity. You choose the quantity. Thinking in Satoshis rather than whole, Bitcoin changes the psychology of accumulation. Instead of trying to afford something that feels out of reach, you are simply building a consistent habit of buying more Satoshis over time. The Satoshi is not a workaround. It is the actual unit of the Bitcoin system. If you want to understand dollar cost averaging as a way of making regular Bitcoin purchases, the video on DCA covers exactly that. Watch that next. Stack smart. Stay curious. See you in the next stack.